All right, folks, how you doing? Welcome back. So this is part 2 of St. Margaret's Chapel. Disclaimer, under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, allowance is made for fair use. Chamberlain to Queen Margaret. Bartholomew later became Chamberlain to Queen Margaret. The role of Chamberlain was one performed often by Sephardic Jews. They were well educated, multilingual, and travelled. Earls of Leven and Roths. Historically, the origins of Chamberlain lie in Persian or Oriental ideas of high rank and luxurious palace life, notably continued by the Caliphs of Islam. The Leslies became the Earls of Leven and Roths, both Jewish/Hebrew appellations. King of Hungary. Notably, Margaret descends from several persons who would appear to be Jews. Zoltan, his consort, the daughter of Maroth, Prince of Behir; Geza, Prince of the Magyars, whose first daughter was named Judith, female Judah, and whose second daughter married a king of Hungary named Samuel Abba. And this is what St. Margaret's Chapel looks like on the inside and on the outside. When Malcolm Canmore and Margaret were married in 1069. The ceremony was performed by a Chaldee priest named Fothad. The Celtic Church had its own priests and religious practices, which corresponded closely to Judaic customs and beliefs. And the book goes into all of that in the early chapters. I'll cover that quite extensively. So here you've got St. Andrew and St. Columba and the windows within the chapel itself. You've also got St. Ninian and Sir William Wallace. And the odd thing is when you go in there, it's like a row of windows. So all the saints are kind of on this kind of lower level like this. And right in the back, you've got William Wallace, and he's above all the other saints, which is quite amusing, really, because William Wallace is not actually a saint. Well, he might be in the eyes of the Scottish people, but he's never been canonized by the Roman Church, which is a bit, well, does he deserve to be sainted? You could make the argument, on Super Omnia, my primary channel, I made 3 videos entitled St. William Wallace, based on the book William Wallace, Robin Hood Revealed, which is up there. So you can check that out. The only last thing I'll say about the building itself, the chapel, is that in 1314, when the Scots were starting to really win the war against England, the first Scottish War of Independence, Robert de Bruce and his forces were storming all the castles, and they were just burning them all down. I think it was in March of 1314 that Thomas Randolph, the Earl of Moray, he and a small force, about 20 or 30 men, snuck into the castle at night, opened the gates, and the Scots just rushed in and burned the whole castle down, killed all the English, mostly in their sleep. Now, they spared one building. Guess which one they did not burn down? It was St. Margaret's Chapel. Very interesting, because Robert de Bruce, his lineage goes back to Queen Margaret, aka St. Margaret. So he was not going to burn down that chapel. It's dedicated to his great-great-great-great-grandmother. And one of the last things that Robert de Bruce even did before he passed away in 1329 was he allocated money aside to repair the chapel. So that's quite telling. So unfortunately, there's not really that much about the chapel in When Scotland Was Jewish, just enough for 2 presentations, really. But it's a fascinating little building, a lot of history there, and a lot of symbolic significance, I would suggest, very much so. And it's still an active church, by the way. You can still get married in there. It's the oldest building in Edinburgh. It's the oldest church in Edinburgh. It's one of the oldest churches in Scotland. I don't believe it is the oldest. I think, actually, no, Iona Abbey wouldn't count because it's an abbey, not a church, but it's definitely one of the oldest in Scotland. I don't think it is the oldest. I don't know how you would classify these things, abbeys and friaries and bishoprics and all the rest of it. But, it's a very, very, very old building, and it's one of the very few that is still around from the 12th century. And Yeah, very, very interesting. If you serve in the British Armed Forces, by the way, you get a discount because there's still a garrison in Edinburgh Castle today. You don't often see them, so you can go to the castle 5 times and never see a single soldier, but they're still there. And the chapel is accessible to the garrison when the castle closes to the public. And they still have marriages and they still have baptisms in there. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.